Josh Dobbs takes you higher. Look at this photograph. Every time I do it makes me laugh. In the end, it doesn't even matter who the Jets are playing. You really can't trust their skill players in fantasy. I put my trust in you. Hope you're feeling good for a Wednesday. I'm Byron Cobalt from byron-cobalt.com and a featured writer for FantasyPros. This is Fantasy Games 1. Fantasy Games 1 is both a statistic that converts fantasy points into Games 1 for your fantasy football team, and it's the name of my weekly fantasy football show, I guess you could say. It's weird to call things that go up on YouTube shows. We're going to go see the show. It's a talkie. Today, we're going to be recapping Week 10. It was a good week if you had a stack. What was it, 2007 or so, when Burger King had the BK Stacker release? One of my favorite burgers of all time. I would gladly have had one with me right now, except for the fact that you can't get them anymore.
And this is where I put a trophy.
Because apparently everyone wants burgers that are not just a pile of, grease and meat, cheese, like that's it. Like, if I really cared about my long-term health, I wouldn't be a Jets fan. What I'm showing up on screen here are 5 stacks that I wanted to talk about. First one here, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Calculating how a stack actually helps your fantasy football team isn't as simple as just taking, say, the Fantasy Games 1 for each player and adding them together. CeeDee Lamb had a Fantasy Games 1 number this past week of 0.39, which is very good. Dak Prescott also very good, 0.32. But if you want to know what the impact was if you had that stack, what were your chances of winning? You can't just add them together. That would actually come out to a win percentage of 121%, which doesn't make any sense. So what you have to do is you add their fantasy points together and treat it as if they're just one player and compare it to the average quarterback plus wide receiver. Dak Prescott was started in 83% of leagues. CeeDee Lamb was started in 98% of leagues. It's about 81% started for this particular stack, meaning that stack came out to a Fantasy Games 1 number of 0.4 compared to other quarterback and wide receiver combinations. It brought your win percentage up to 90% in Week 10. This is just how that exact stack helped you. It was actually not the best stack of Week 10. Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert combined for a stack Fantasy Games 1 number of 0.44. So they brought your win percentage up to 94% because you're almost certainly, or you're more likely to have started them both. As far as the stacks that instead just stacked up your arteries, the arteries of your fantasy football team, Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley, they combined for 5 points. But thankfully, if you had them, there's a decent chance you didn't start both of them. If you came out to about 39% chance of starting that stack, it still hurt you. It dropped your win percentage by 17 points, down to about 33% chance of winning. The worst stack of the week, believe it or not, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, where if you had them almost 100% of the time, or basically 100% of the time you're starting both of them, combining for only 20.3 points, brought you all the way down to 23% chance of winning if you had that particular stack. One that I'd like to add here that's just interesting, Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs had a 25% started number. TJ Hawkinson at 89%. Hawkinson had a great week. Josh Dobbs had a very good week. Fantasy Games 1 number of 0.09 just because of how unlikely that was. It was a very good quarterback and tight end stack. I'd never heard of anyone touting that particular stack. Maybe we'll see more of that in Week 11. But before we get into Week 11, we got to recap Week 10. So let's find out who won the week.
Can you take me higher?
Why is it taking me longer to get to the page? If you're seeing this video on a Thursday, it's because my video production was a little bit delayed this week. I actually hosted a pretty big dinner nonprofit thing on Tuesday night. My analysis seems a little bit drained of resources. That's probably why. Still gonna get a video up because I'm a professional.
Well, I'm a professional. I'm serious and I'm a professional.
All right, here's who won Week 10. Keenan Allen edges out CeeDee Lamb for the top spot. Keenan Allen, this is his second week of the year he's won for Fantasy Games 1. He won back in Week 3. If we're making the comparison to Kenan Thompson's movie career, if Week 3 was Snakes on a Plane, I guess that means Week 10 for Keenan Allen was They Came Together, I guess? I'd never heard of this movie. You can imagine what they might be alluding to there. I guess it is Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler on there, so it's probably not an accident. Speaking of nice couples, here we have the CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott combination. Yeah, it is kind of surprising that they were the second best stack. There are no changes in terms of how your Cowboys are performing. More of the same. Mike, you want the defense, you want Dak, you want CeeDee. You don't want Tony Pollard for whatever reason. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Keenan Allen are both now on the top 20 all-time since 2021 leaders for total Fantasy Games 1. So congratulations to them. for making the all-time list. They were both on the all-time list earlier in the season, then fell off, but now they're back. Here's TJ Hawkinson with the 5th spot, type tight end of the week. TJ Hawkinson not only is a Minnesota Viking, he looks like a Viking. And his name, as I've alluded to before, with the son, that's a sign of Viking heritage. Hawkinson would mean you are the son of Haken. Let's celebrate this, all right? While we're talking about singing, my mother told me someday I would buy tight ends with low floors, prone for random high scores. One more player we'll talk about. The RB1 for the week is Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs Racing. Now that NASCAR season is over, maybe what happened this whole time was he's just actually on the Joe Gibbs Racing payroll, and that's the reason why he couldn't get as much workload earlier in the year. Who knows? He's taking advantage of it now. You have Jahmyr Gibbs. Your season's starting to turn the corner right now. One more name I'll mention here, Chris Olave, finally on here now that we don't have, I guess, Derek Carr out there. If Jameis Winston keeps, playing quarterback, Chris Olave might be one of the top receivers for the rest of the season. Awesome catch, too, for him for that touchdown. That's it for the winners. Let's see who lost you your week. Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown's percent started number jumped up from 30% to 63% this week, which made sense because Kyler Murray came back. And because it's fantasy football, that savvy move of starting him because you paid attention, you're rewarded with his worst week of the year. That's fantasy football. And we're all masochists for playing it. If you added on to your stacker with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, made it a triple and added Tyler Bass to that to get the Bills kicker in there, you probably lost. It looks like our Levi's have a little bit too many holes in them now, as DeAndre Hopkins is fallen off, is on the losers list. The honeymoon with those jeans are over. Maybe it's time to switch to Lee's, although there isn't another quarterback named Lee, at least not right now. Trevor Lawrence, man. Trevor Lawrence has spent most of the season being slightly below average, which all things considered is actually really bad for fantasy. So he's been fluctuating between about 15 to 20 points every week. 7 of the 8 weeks that he played this season, he had between 15 and 20 points. Average for a starting quarterback, 21 points. It's probably not helping you win every week. He did have one week in there where he scored 9 points, which is bad but not terrible. Well, he was doing well enough that you're still probably starting him over a lot of quarterback streamers, and week 10, the bottom dropped out. He was already probably edged you below edged. I'm talking about, who came together, edging. I'm going to have to label this video for, adults only or something like that.
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence, actually, he's the least valuable player this season. He's taken a huge jump. No one's even close to him. All this talk about Joe Burrow and Najee Harris, Trevor Lawrence now is just right past him. He's the LVP right now. But before I finish talking about the losers here, I got to talk about Derrick Henry a little bit. And back in 2021, when he was dominating fantasy in the first half of the year, I thought he was like the Terminator. And I did not realize at the time how much that might mean I have to familiarize myself with the Terminator sequels when he inevitably started to tail off in terms of his production. There are a lot of Terminator sequels. I don't, I'm not totally looking forward to this. Wish me luck. It might be a long night of mediocre action movies. I guess I'd rather watch that than they came together. Finish wrapping up week 10. Let's see who probably did the best on your bench. The Junior Varsity All-Stars featured Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks was his first time featured on a Fantasy Games 1 board this year. Brandon Cooks, I looked it up before the video. He's still only 30 years old. I don't know how Brandon Cooks is only 30 years old. He feels like he's 40 years old. The hell are you talking about, Byron? Noah Brown, still with only a 6% started number. This isn't the first time that Noah was largely untrusted by the general public. Bible jokes in Fantasy Games 1. And I'm going to go a little bit off script here for the last one for the Bench All-Stars. Going down to Josh Dobbs, who was actually number 16. He barely missed the list because he was started in a decent number of leagues. I really hope that the meme that Josh Dobbs posts on his own TikTok of the other guy duetting Creed to his, scrambling for a touchdown there becomes a trend. Get some more late 90s, early 2000s hard rock and new metal songs in there. I had at least one Creed CD, maybe two. And I have to say, the Photoshop on those album covers is rough. Let's give a leaderboard update. We haven't talked about the return on investment leaderboard in a couple of weeks. Keenan Allen, with his awesome week, is now up to number 2. He's within 0.11 points of Tyreek Hill now of the top return on investment, which actually would make sense because you would really expect the top return on investment player to be someone that's not drafted in the first round. This has been the year of the first round pick, and maybe Keenan Allen's going to start to help break that up. TJ Hawkinson, not too far behind. If you're able to land both of those in, say, rounds 4 and 5 this year in your draft, Good job. Dallas defense still hanging in there. Raheem Mostert, another average week. He's hanging in. Baltimore defense stepping up a little bit. Crowd out some of the first rounders that are clogging up our return on investment leaderboard. Well, like I said, the BK stacker is no longer on the menu. And I would say that Trevor Lawrence is probably off the menu for week 11. If you have to order one large Trevor Lawrence, at least your team can hopefully run on a cliche movie scene where you come together while running through the woods, like in Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans? It was just okay. Hope your week 10 was more than just okay. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And check me out on FantasyPros or blog at byron-cobalt.com. It's been a privilege and an honor. Good luck in week 11. We'll see you next Wednesday.
That's it.